In the old tales of the Slavic world, the forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a character, a living, breathing entity that exists on the border between our world and another. It is a place of deep shadow and even deeper memory, where the normal rules of reality begin to fray, and where those who are lost or desperate or brave enough to seek it can find things that should not exist. You journey for days, leaving the familiar behind. The path disappears. The sound of human life fades into an oppressive silence broken only by the snap of a twig underfoot or the whisper of the wind, which sometimes sounds like a neigh. It is here in the heart of the deep woods that you might find her domain, but you do not find her. First you find her house. It is a thing of profound impossibility. A small crude log cabin perched precariously on a pair of giant, scaly chicken legs. It does not sit still. The house can walk, it can run, and sometimes it spins in a frantic, dizzying circle. It has a will of its own, and it is surrounded by a fence made of human bones. Its posts are topped with skulls, whose eye sockets glow with an eerie internal fire in the darkness. To approach the house is a ritual in itself. One cannot simply walk up to the door. You must know the secret words, the proper incantations, to make it stop its spinning and turn its door towards you. Hut, oh hut, turn your back to the forest and your front to me. Only then does the house groan to a halt, its great legs bending, lowering itself to the ground to grant you entry. And who is the mistress of this impossible home? She is a monster who sharpens her teeth on a stone and eats lost children. And she is a wise woman who offers the magical gifts that can save a kingdom. She is a witch who commands the elements, and she is the guardian of the waters of life and death. She flies through the sky in a giant mortar, using the pestle as a rudder and sweeping away her tracks with a broom made of silver birch. For centuries, one name has haunted the forests of Eastern Europe: Baba Yaga. But she is a villain, a helper. Or is she a force of nature as neutral and as dangerous as the forest itself? Who or what is she? To find the answer, we must do as the heroes of the old stories did. We must be brave, we must be respectful, and we must knock on her door. To truly understand the enigma of Baba Yaga, we must not look at her alone. We must look at those who were brave or desperate enough to seek her out. And of all the heroes and heroines in the old stories did, none is more famous than the young girl known as Vasilisa, the Beautiful. Her story begins, as so many do, with a dying mother's last gift. Before she passed away, Vasilisa's mother gave her a small magical doll with final instructions. "Feed this doll, my child," she said, "and consult it whenever you are in trouble. It will help you." This doll was more than a toy. It was Vasilisa's intuition, the inherited wisdom of her maternal line, given in physical form. After her mother's death, Vasilisa's father remarried a cruel and jealous woman with 2 daughters of her own. The stepmother and stepsisters were envious of Vasilisa's beauty and gentle spirit, and they tormented her relentlessly. They forced her to do all of the work of the household, hoping to wear her down with endless labor and extinguish the light within her. But every night, Vasilisa would share a small crumb of her food with her doll and tell it her troubles. And the doll would come to life, comforting her and magically performing all of her impossible chores while she slept. It would weed the garden, carry the water, and light the fires. And so, despite her family's cruelty, Vasilisa endured, and her beauty only grew. Determined to be rid of her once and for all, the stepmother devised a wicked plan. She moved the family to a small, isolated cottage on the very edge of a deep, dark forest. A forest that everyone knew was the domain of Baba Yaga. One autumn evening, the stepmother put out every candle and lamp in the house, plunging them into darkness. "We have no fire," she declared. "One of you must go to our neighbor's house and ask for a light." Of course, their only neighbor was the witch, Baba Yaga. The stepsisters refused in mock terror, and so the duty fell to Vasilisa. It was a death sentence disguised as a household chore. And so, with only her doll in her pocket for comfort, the young Vasilisa was sent out alone into the haunted woods on an impossible errand. Vasilisa walked through the night. The forest grew deeper, darker, and more silent. The branches of the ancient trees seemed to reach for her, and strange sounds echoed in the darkness. She was terrified, but she trusted the doll which she kept in her pocket, and it guided her feet, keeping her on the path. She walked all through the next day, and as another night began to fall, she knew she must be close. The woods here felt different, older, and possessed by a powerful and unsettling presence. The very air seemed to hum with a strange energy. It was then that she witnessed the first of the great mysteries. Suddenly, a rider galloped past her on a horse. The man himself was dressed in all white. His face was bright and shining, and he rode upon a pure white horse, and as he passed her, the deep darkness of the night receded, and the pale gray light of dawn began to filter through the trees. Vasilisa was struck with awe, but she continued on her way. Later, as the sun was high in the sky, a second rider galloped past. This one was dressed in all red. His face was flushed and brilliant, and he rode upon a red horse, the color of blood. And as he passed, the sun began to blaze with its full midday glory. Vasilisa now understood that there were no mortal horsemen here. She was entering a realm where the fundamental forces of the world took on a physical form. Finally, as evening fell, she reached a clearing, and there she saw Baba Yaga's impossible hut, surrounded by its fence of bones. Just as she arrived, a third and final rider galloped past. He was dressed in all black, his face was dark as a shadow, and he rode upon a jet black horse. He rode straight through Baba Yaga's gates and vanished. And as he did, night fell upon the world instantly, a deep and total darkness. Vasilisa stood there in terror, the only light now coming from the glowing eye sockets of the skulls on the fence. Her doll trembled in fear in her pocket. She had just witnessed the passing of Baba Yaga's faithful servants, her bright day, her red sun, and her dark midnight. The being she had come to see did not just rule a small hut in the woods. She commanded time itself. Trembling, Vasilisa entered the hut and found herself in a strange and wondrous place. The hut was far larger on the inside than it had appeared from the outside, but it was also grim and foreboding. The air was thick with the smell of strange herbs and something else, something vaguely human. She saw a great dark stove, a table that set itself, and stranger still, 3 pairs of disembodied hands that scurried about, acting as invisible servants. Then the very air began to howl, and the trees outside groaned. The great noise filled the forest as Baba Yaga came flying home. She landed in her courtyard, sniffed the air, and shrieked, "I smell a human! Who is there?" Vasilisa, remembering her doll's advice, stepped forward, bowed her head low, and answered respectfully, but without a tremor in her voice. "It is only I, grandmother. My stepsisters sent me to you to ask for fire." Baba Yaga glared down at the girl with her terrible eyes. "I know your stepmother," she snarled. "Very well, you shall have your fire, if you can earn it. You will stay here and work for me. If you do everything I ask, you will get what you came for. If not," she grinned, revealing her sharpened iron teeth, "then I shall eat you." The next morning, Baba Yaga gave Vasilisa her very first set of impossible tasks. She was to sweep the yard, clean the entire hut, cook the dinner, and most importantly, and impossibly, she was to take a bushel of wheat and separate it, grain by single grain, from a pile of dirt and poppy seeds. And she was to have it all done by the time Baba Yaga returned home. Left alone, Vasilisa looked upon the mountain of grain, and her heart filled with despair. The task was truly impossible. She began to cry, but then she remembered her mother's gift. She took out the small wooden doll, set a crumb of bread before it, and told it of her terrible predicament. The doll's eyes seemed to glow. "Do not weep, little mistress," a tiny voice whispered. "Eat your supper, say your prayers, and go to sleep, for the morning is always wiser than the evening." And so, trusting her intuition, Vasilisa did as she was told. While Vasilisa slept a deep and peaceful sleep, the little doll went to work. It summoned ants and birds and unseen helpers, and all through the night it sorted the great pile, separating the wheat from the poppy seeds, from the dirt into 3 neat piles. When Baba Yaga returned the next day, she was astonished and enraged to find every task completed perfectly. Bound by the ancient rules of magic, she could not punish the girl, but she was not yet defeated. She set even more tasks for the next day, each one more impossible than the last, and each night the doll completed them. Vasilisa never saw how the work was done. She simply trusted her inner voice, rested, and awoke to find that her trials had been overcome. Finally, Baba Yaga knew that she had been bested. A power greater than her own was protecting the girl. "You have done your work," she grumbled. "Take your fire." But first, she allowed Vasilisa to ask some questions. Remembering her doll's advice, Vasilisa wisely asked only about the things that she had seen outside of the hut. "I saw a white horseman," she said. "Who was he?" "That was my bright day," the witch replied. "And the red horseman?" "That was my red sun." "And the black horseman?" "That was my dark midnight. They are my faithful servants." Baba Yaga then turned her terrible gaze upon the girl. "And why do you not ask about the things that you've seen inside my hut?" "The disembodied hands?" Vasilisa bowed her head and replied, "Because you yourself have said, grandmother, that it is not good for those who know too much." This answer showing that Vasilisa respected the boundaries of secret knowledge, pleased the old witch greatly. She had passed the final test, the test of wisdom. With the test complete, Baba Yaga's demeanor changed. She was bound by the ancient laws of magic and hospitality. The girl had earned her prize. "You have asked enough," the witch grumbled. "Take the fire you came for and go." Baba Yaga walked her to the terrible fence, plucked one of the skulls with its furiously burning eyes from a post, and mounted it on a stick. Then she handed it to Vasilisa. "Here is your light," she said. "Take it home. This is what your stepmother sent you here for." Vasilisa took the gruesome lantern, bowed one last time, and turned to leave. As she walked away, she heard Baba Yaga's voice call out behind her, "You have been well served, child. Be well." It was not a warm blessing, but a simple statement of fact from one power recognizing another. Vasilisa walked back through the forest, but this time there was no fear in her heart. The path that had seemed so terrifying in the darkness was now brilliantly illuminated by the eerie, otherworldly light of the skull. The ancient trees seemed to shrink away from its gaze, and the darkness itself recoiled. She wanted to throw the skull away to be rid of the terrible object, but a quiet voice from the doll in her pocket whispered, "Do not throw it away, little mistress. You have earned it. Carry it home." Vasilisa understood. She was no longer just a frightened girl sent on an errand. She was now a wielder of magic, a carrier of a powerful and dangerous justice taken from the land of the dead itself. When she finally arrived back at the cottage, her stepmother and stepsisters rushed to meet her. They told her they had been without fire the entire time that she was gone, unable to strike a spark. They were relieved to see the light she carried, hoping their cruel plan had succeeded in some other way. But Vasilisa stepped into the cottage, the skull's eyes burning, fixed upon the three wicked women. They stared, transfixed into its empty sockets. The light it gave off seemed to intensify, to hunt them. They tried to run, to hide in the shadows of the room, but there was nowhere to hide. The light followed them, its gaze filled with an unearthly intelligence and an ancient burning judgment. The skull's gaze burned into them, tracking their every move. It scorched them with a magical fire, and by morning, all that was left of the cruel stepmother and her two wicked daughters was a small pile of fine black ash on the floor. This was not an act of murder committed by Vasilisa. It was an act of justice delivered by the uncanny power she had brought back from the very edge of the other world. Having survived her ordeal and seen justice done, Vasilisa buried the skull in the garden so it could harm no other person. She left the cursed cottage behind forever and went on to live a long and prosperous life. Her trial by fire was over. She had faced the great and terrible Mother of the Woods and had emerged not as a victim, but as a wise and powerful woman in her own right. And so ends the most famous telling of the story of Vasilisa the Beautiful,